I'm just kidding. I'm not going to do that. But happy birthday, man. And it's your first COVID birthday, right?
Yeah, it feels great. I love having a birthday when I can't be around anyone, and I can just stare at the wall all day.
Hopefully, we only get one of sarcasm.
Yeah, no, I am a hyper social person, and it was like, thankfully I've had 10 months of practice with the COVID era, so it was very much sort of like a couple's day with my dog, where we did a crossword together. We went on an hour-long walk, and I listened to a podcast, and she sniffed everything. And then we went and played fetch for another hour. I went for a run by my own. It just, it's like having a regular girlfriend.
Yeah. I didn't know Olive was so good at the crossword, but here we are.
Yeah, she sucks at it, but I don't want to hurt her feelings. So
okay, well, yeah, that's obviously.
When you're better than your partner at something, and
important.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a nice birthday.
Did you get any good presents?
Well, I'm glad you asked. I was walking around today and I was just thinking that the perfect birthday gift does not exist. And right before I finished that sentence in my head, we all got texts from Dr. Flo. Flo, tell our listeners what this present was.
Well, the supervisor, Phil Cerna, was posting about, the response to everything that happened last week with the weather and with not, opening up the warming shelters. And, America's landlord, Steve Maviglio, is right there to
America's landlord
was right there to give his whack takes. And I decided, you know what? Dave's birthday. Normally, I don't engage him. But on behalf of Dave, I'm not going to let this whack take sit unresponded. And so I did. And he always has the wackest of takes. And so it went nowhere productive. And in fact, in calling out the fact that his take was whack, he said that I was name calling and attacking him, which was gaslighting at its finest. And so
there was not one name call in there.
Not one. Not one.
Perhaps Maviglio is a listener of the show, because on multiple occasions, at least I have called him America's landlord for, of course, what he did out in D.C. over the summer during the protests, when he tried to basically take all of the hero's response that people had given that man who let all those young folks running away from these violent police into his home. And Maviglio, of course, said, I'm the landlord. Everyone should be thanking me.
Didn't he tried to make some statement about how what's really heroic is paying your rent on time or something like that?
That was also part of it. Yeah.
Dude, this dude fucking rules. I love it.
Well, his take today was that, we should not put housing 300 feet away from other housing, because housing people who were previously unhoused is a threat to the people who are housed. And when I pointed out to him that, being unhoused is not a viral condition that can spread, he doubled down on the fact that these people have saved up their whole lives to buy this, and they don't need this riffraff in their community. And I was just like, or we could maybe, put some sharps boxes out and maybe pick up the trash, and then nobody has to live with this in their community. So, whack takes all around, but it was your birthday, Dave. So,
thank you.
I had to give him a little something.
It meant a lot. And in 1 week, we actually get to celebrate when the results of the ADEMS come out, Steve losing that. So it's, nothing but sunshine ahead.
Listen, it's the age of Aquarius.
It is.
Well, Dave, once again, happy birthday. Let's hope that this year is a little different than last year, and hopefully next year on your birthday, I'm buying you drinks somewhere.
I can barely even imagine it, but yes, let's hope that.
Amen.
All right. Until then, let's do this show.
Let's do it.
Voices, the things they said. Voices, some from those dead. All the voices heard. Voices, things we say. Voices, they're in your head. All the voices heard.
Why, hello, everyone. You have Kempa.
And you have Skylar.
And no Shannon, but I'm Flo.
No Shannon today. Shannon has had quite a few weeks serving.
I think you can call it a year. I think you can call what Shannon has been doing a whole year.
Wednesday
she's had
was
life.
a whole year. Yeah.
Right.
She has been, as we all know, she is the director of Mary House, which is the emergency daytime drop-in shelter for women experiencing homelessness in the Sacramento region. And she has, everybody at Mary House has been working overtime to take care of these women who've had to endure this effectively a week-long storm. Shannon is taking a few days off, much needed, well-earned. Get that hot tub, Shannon.
Absolutely.
Get it.
So let's talk about today. What are we going to talk about? We got things to talk about.
So many things.
Yeah, well, I wanted to actually start this one off. I'm again going to take advantage of the fact that one of our regular co-hosts is an epidemiologist, because so I'm just going to preface this by saying I feel like every time I'm looking through the news or Twitter or whatever, the numbers are either really good or they're just as bad, and we shouldn't be changing what we're doing. People have different ideas about what tier we're in and what we're allowed to be doing, and what different ideas about whether or not it's a good idea or where we're at. Flo, please blow away some of this fog for me and inform me: are the numbers good or bad? Is the state acting appropriately, and how scared should I be?
Okay, so the hot take is the numbers are better than they were before, but still not good. And the state is not doing what we should be doing if we want to continue on this trend. So that's the headline. Now, to do a deeper dive into that, what I mean by that is the new case total was somewhere just under 14,000 for yesterday. And
that's for the entire state?
For the state, yes.
Okay.
So around 14,000 new cases. We were at 37,000 cases a day or so when we were at our most recent peak. So this is great, right? We are now down to, somewhere, we've more than halved that number, and that's really good. But 13,000 cases a day is higher than what we thought was the peak last summer.
Right.
When we were somewhere around 11,000 or so cases per day. So it's relative, right? And that's the thing, you never know where you are in the peak until you move past it. And it's all by comparison, because before the graph looked like it was going up like this. Now that peak we had last summer looks like it's just all part of what we've been moving along and doing.
Right.
So what we've looked at in terms of projections is if we continued the most restrictive of our policies in terms of, sheltering in place, not keeping things open and really doubling down, we could potentially get this under control by the summertime if we continued the most restrictive. And there are all these different projections of when we decide to loosen restrictions and how long it takes for us to get to that same place in terms of cases. And
right.
and what that means is lives, impacted and potentially lost, depending on how we choose to do this. So seeing this precipitous decline and deciding that, great, we should reopen things, is exactly the opposite of what all of the folks who know this work well and do predictive modeling are telling us to do. The best thing we could do is just be a little more patient and get ourselves to the summer, because we have a much better chance of not having a resumption in the number of cases per day to what we've seen most recently.
Yeah. So here in the state of California, we have had 3.25 million confirmed cases. That's nearing 1 out of every 10 people at this point.
Yep.
We've had about 41,000 deaths throughout the country. We've had 26.3 million confirmed cases and 442,000 deaths. So
to add on to those numbers, Dave, you recommended a podcast to me today that I listened to kind of about the subject. Which podcast was that again?
The Daily did a episode last week, I believe it was Wednesday, where they brought on their all-star healthcare reporter, Don McNeil Jr. We can talk about him in a minute. He has gotten in trouble lately for some things he said, but he came on and sort of talked through, this sort of downward slope. And one thing he said, that the episode itself starts out pretty positively, and they ask why are the numbers going down. One of the reasons is the holidays are over.
The holidays are over, right? Exactly.
People aren't traveling. People aren't going out of their house as much in a January and a February. He also mentioned that we are at a point now when you look at this 26.3 million confirmed cases.
This is what I was going to bring up.
3.25 million in our state. He was saying that a lot of experts, a lot of epidemiologists say that you can almost multiply that by 3 or 4, and that's the actual number of cases that have blown through,
including people who weren't symptomatic. And
right.
Yes.
Yeah, right.
So he was saying that once you reach, that's like effectively 30% of our
it's
entire
a third
country
of the country has like been infected if you go by those numbers.
And once you reach that point, as far as herd immunity goes, which is, everyone who had a brain or a heart who wanted people to live was saying, let's not go the herd immunity route. Let's protect lives. That's not what we did. We have almost 500,000 people dead. We are at that 30% point. Once you reach 30% on the pathway to herd immunity, it's just harder for the virus to bounce around through the population. Flo, is that?
Yeah. So that's one of the reasons why you're likely to see, the cases begin to decline. The other reason for that is, of course, we are beginning to roll out vaccine. And so there are now some people who have gotten 2 doses of vaccine. And what we know about the vaccine thus far is that it's about 95% effective in terms of reducing transmission. So those 2 things together will be helpful. The question that remains for us, though, is that how long does immunity last after someone's been infected? And so are those people who were early cases in February, March, April, May of last year, are they still protected? Or do they enter back into the risk pool? And that's the difference between something like measles and something like the flu, which circulates every year because of how much it changes. People constantly are re-entering the risk pool, even though they've been previously infected. And so that's not good. The other thing, of course, that comes up with this is what we don't know about these new viruses, these new viral strains, which is how quickly, if they're 70% more effective at transmitting, then that changes our calculus also, because now you have a new strain that still could potentially be, protected by the vaccine, which is great. But it means that those same behaviors that you were doing before, where 1 or 2 people might have gotten sick, now you're talking about far more people in that same group getting sick. And then of course, going back to their, routine and infecting other people. So those are the questions, again, because this is new, that we still don't know. We don't know how long the immunity lasts. We don't know whether you enter the risk pool again, and we don't know what these new strains are going to do to change that calculus, which is why it's incredibly important that we don't start reopening at this very moment, because there are so many questions that are in the air.
I was reading about different strains. There's the South Africa strain. There's the England strain.
Yep.
There is, very disturbingly, which is one of the scariest ones I'm reading, the California strain.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah. Oh boy, the California difference. Yeah, and so we're learning week by week about these different strains in terms of what they're able to do. And the scariest thing would be if a new strain emerges that works like the flu, where it's not going to be you're not going to be protected if you've gotten the vaccine. And that would be scary for two reasons. One, we have enough problem with people not understanding how vaccines work and then getting very upset when they get sick after getting a vaccine, not realizing that they probably had already been infected before they were immunized. So that would undermine everyone's confidence in the vaccine overall, which could significantly hamper the outreach and distribution efforts. It also would be bad because it means that all those people who we thought were out of the risk pool re-enter the risk pool again as susceptible to this virus. And so there are the two ways that really could undermine all the good public health work that's happening right now. So the hope is that worst case scenario, these are easier to spread, but they're not going to evade the vaccines, which by the end of this month, we may potentially have 5 online that are going to be, out for distribution, with 3 new ones potentially coming online in February. And so that could be really scary.
It could be. I also read
right now
stuff.
It's not.
Yeah, I also I read a couple articles today saying that so far with these new strains, the vaccines have held up. They've held their own.
That's
now,
correct.
if there is, we've got plenty of time. We got time for more strains to come out. So we're not out of the woods, but yeah.
Yeah. So right now, this is a non-issue. I just want to underscore for our listeners, these are all of the reasons why now is not the time to get lax on the things that we're doing, for a myriad of reasons, right? One of which is we actually could potentially be in a safe place to actually open up and not potentially have to close down again if we wait a little bit longer.
Right.
And also because we are learning about these new strains, and if they get to widespread distribution and they are worse than we anticipated, that means more people already have them, and that creates challenges for us as well. So that's why we're cautiously optimistic right now, and that's why we need to, I regret that this is the way to describe it, but stay the course. Because if we don't, we potentially put ourselves in a way worse position in terms of risk and in terms of the number of lives that are impacted.
Yeah.
Okay, so where are we then in terms of, the state is at purple tier or something? Didn't he just opened up the rest of the state, right? To do what is it? It's outdoor dining. Is it limited indoor dining as well?
So this is where things get murky, because the whole reason that we were on this regional tier system was because of ICU availability. So now with ICUs becoming more available, now we're reopening as if that's an indication of our containment of the virus, and it's not. And so that's the part that I'm a bit bummed about, because it means that we're tying all of this to we're reopening the economy because we want people to make money, but it's not necessarily in the interest of public health.
People are going to die. Yeah.
And we're deciding that saving some businesses or that sort of thing, we're, instead of providing them with aid to be able to safely do what's necessary to keep everyone, keep everyone protected from this virus, that we're willing to reopen and risk their, that's the calculus.
Mm-hmm.
Well, not to mention
saving lives.
Not to mention be able to just open up your business sooner, right? I mean, if and I don't know, I don't know. My hot take about that is that the further in we go, the less mad I am about small business owners, and the more mad I am at the government for not bailing them out and be paying them to stay closed,
right? For not taking on the banks, for not taking care of these people who live here, who just want to buy.
Yeah.
And imagine how much better this whole management would have been if we hadn't, like, when we shut down in, by end of March, we were like, look, based on what we now know, and that what we now know changed. Like, I was on this podcast for my first episode, and what we now know changed rapidly within, we were talking about tens of hours as new information was coming out. But by early April, what we had come to understand was that this was going to take a while, but nobody was saying that, right? Everybody was like, we hope to reopen in May, maybe even June. And I was like, look, we'll be lucky if we get there by the end of the year, right? At that point, we already knew that. And so I think it allows people to plan better if you don't keep them in crisis mode. And if from the beginning we had said, look, our first set of shutdowns are going to be at least 12 weeks, and this is what we're going to do to be able to help you out. It is likely we'll have to continue beyond that. And if so, those will come batched in, whatever these timeframes are, because it's essentially left us all. I mean, I think we're normalizing into it now, but we're all left in this, like, are we reopening? Are we not?
Right.
Are we reopening? Are we not? And like human beings, our brains don't deal well with that level of uncertainty of like, what is our life going to look like?
Yes.
Right.
We
would have done better if you just said, I will see you all in 2021. And here's how we're going to take care of you for the next 10 months.
Right.
Versus every other week being like, am I going to lose my house? Am I going back to work?
Right.
Are my kids going back to school? I don't know what's going on. Like
it's literally
chaos.
Yeah, the human brain, I like the way you put that. It wants closure in one direction or another, even if it's bad. Even okay, I lost my house. Now that's done. What is my next thing for me to do?
Yep.
When we are constantly in limbo and constantly in fight or flight mode effectively for 10, 11 months, that's going to have some long-lasting effects, I think, on a grand scale on mental health in this country.
I mean, and the other side, the other thing the human brain does, right, is it goes into fuck it mode, which is where a lot of people are. Damn it. I derailed myself, which is where a lot of people are, but based on the fact that if you take a jaunt around Midtown right now, there are several bars that are just full of people indoors that are not wearing masks right now. Like, I think that's the other side of it for me is I'm like, we have kind of things set out, but we're not enforcing them. People, and I think that is the thing. I think by keeping everybody in the state of like, well, we're shut down, well, we're not shut down, well, we're shut down, well, we're not shut down for this long, I think people are just like, nah, you know what? I'm done with this. I'm going to do what I'm going to do. And you do what you're going to do, which obviously is like the dumbest possible way to look at this thing. But like, I don't know, like I'm having a harder and harder time being judgmental of like regular people about this thing as we go forward.
Yeah. And I've said this before on the show. What helps me get by at this point is knowing what I can and can't control. And, we can take care of ourselves and the people we love. And I know that there's a seg we got to make soon, but I just wanted to talk about our sort of personally where we are. I think all three of us aren't terribly scared of catching COVID ourselves. Maybe that's not the case, but I am desperate for my parents to get that vaccine.
Yeah.
Flo, where are you on? Your mom's gotten it, right?
My mom has gotten her first dose. Yes. She was in the Moderna vaccine trial. And so she was unblinded and was told that she did not get the vaccine, which I was like, oh, now we're never going to hear the end of it. Cause she had already predicted it. She was like, I think I got the placebo. I didn't feel anything.
She could feel it. She knew.
I was like, Mom, stop trying to outsmart the double-blind nature of the clinical trial. The whole point is you're supposed to think you got it so that you get the placebo effect. But yeah, she got hers. And so she is due to get her second one in, I think, a week or so.
Great.
So she will be immunized. And the hope is that by the beginning of March, that the vaccines will be widely available because manufacturing is supposed to be ramping up right now. So right now I think we've made it available for people over 65 and healthcare workers and people in specific industries. But
varies by state, but yeah.
Yes. Sorry. Yeah. That's a California specific, plan right now, but the hope is that by the time we get to early to mid-March, it will be widely available for those who want it.
How about your parents, Skylar?
My parents have not had the vaccine yet.
It's tough in California. It's tough to get right now.
Yeah.
They're good about it though. They're smart with it. They're doing what they need to be doing.
Mine are too, but you just never know.
Oh, I would prefer they both get vaccinated tomorrow.
Yeah. So mine, in my dad and stepmom in Texas have not yet, but they're hoping to get them in a few weeks. My mom and stepdad in Nashville, they just heard from the governor that starting Tuesday, February 2nd, if you're 70 or older, you can get it. So they're going to be scrambling to get that done, and I'm just so desperate for that to happen, man. So I mean that's just kind of when our posterity are listening to this episode, they'll just hear kind of what the tenor is like right now and what the culture is like around this. It's a weird moment in history, you know.
It is. Yeah. It really is.
Let's talk a little bit about this moment in history within the context of California. We still have the Q folks, we've got the anti-vaxxers, we've got the Trumpers that are furious with Newsom, and they've been trying to get him, Gavin Newsom, our governor, to try to reopen the state, to a point where there have been threats of violence, threats against his life, threats against his family, threats against all of his businesses, his wineries and things like that throughout California. What is this telling us?
Well, the people are upset with him, and they're upset with his handling of this for a variety of reasons. But I think that's the part that's really interesting to me is, when strange bedfellows emerge, right? So you have this started as essentially a right-wing thing where people were wanting to reopen the economy, were upset that Gavin had put in place all of these things that he was being lauded, at least nationally by people who, cared about managing the virus for doing. And then the tide sort of turned, especially when he was seen dining at French Laundry while everybody else was, trying their best to avoid friends and family and not do things like that. And then, more and more details emerge. His kids are going to school. Many people do not have the luxury of having their children going to school every day, right? And so those things that separate the haves and have-nots begin to then cause people on the other side of the political aisle to say, wait a second, you're not managing this well. You're not doing enough for us. And we're hurting as a result of it. And so then you have the far right people who don't want to do any protections and the people who wanted more protections now joining forces and saying, you're not our person.
That's the Democrat way, right? The centrist Democrat way is to we can't do the right thing, because if we do the right thing, then the people who are wrong will be mad. So we have to sort of do a little bit of the wrong thing so that we can help these guys out. But then the people who want you to do the right thing are also mad at you, and you're not willing to go and do the wrong thing all the way. So the people who are wrong will be happy with you. So then you wind up like a centrist Democrat and nobody likes you. And then then you're left scratching your head to figure out why.
Yep.
These Democrats that want to bring everyone to the table, they're like, all right, Republicans, progressives.
Right.
Now Republicans.
People who want healthcare for everybody. Klansmen. Everybody, let's sit down together and
let's see if we can't find a shared pool of meaning. Yeah. like you, sir, you believe that I am in a satanic cabal and that I use child trafficking to keep looking young. And you, sir, want healthcare. Let's see what
Let's find the middle ground here.
When will they move beyond?
It's too true.
I think the other chud line about him, they think that he his like wineries are still open.
Yeah.
That's like a thing with the chuds. I mean, I like, even it's my understanding that he did the thing you're supposed to do and he put all that stuff into a blind trust when he took office, right? So it's kind of not really on him either way. I guess the chuds are probably not caring about that so much, though.
I mean, I'm not an expert at this, but I think what they're thinking long term is that, like, yeah, you put it in a blind trust so that you're not making day-to-day decisions that will impact your businesses, but you haven't relinquished control. Those are still your assets, right? And so when you do things that are good or bad for them, you benefit in the long term, even if you're not benefiting in a day-to-day, right? So like, I'm sure that's probably, for the people who are more in the know, they're like, yeah, blind trust.
Yeah,
well,
sure.
That's still yours.
I'm pretty sure Gavin Newsom knows what Signal is, and I'm sure he has some chats with some folks pretty much regularly regarding his assets.
I mean,
So obviously there's like kind of more and more recall talk happening, and that seems like it's gaining some momentum. What do you for one, what do you think the odds are of that effort actually coming to fruition? And two, how much of his calculus and the way that he's handling the coronavirus stuff right now, do you think, how much is he influenced by political pressure and like the threat of a recall? How much do you think that's informing the way that he's making his decisions around coronavirus? I mean, obviously all I can ask you to do is speculate, but
yeah, I mean, my speculation would be this has to loom large. I mean, they have until, I think, the deadline. First of all, the deadline was extended for them to collect signatures, which doesn't work in Gavin's favor, right? It gives them more time. And I think they have until St. Patrick's Day to be able to get all the signatures in, if I'm recalling correctly. And I think they're only
gonna be a wild St. Patrick's
200,000 signatures like short of their goal. Which, granted, all of them
million, and they need 1.5-ish million.
Yeah, so like they're 200,000, signatures away from being where they need to be, and that's or from getting the number. But then you need to overshoot that because some of those are going to be invalid, and they're like all the issues that come along with it. But still, I mean, that's a pretty scary place to be, especially because they have until March 17th, and it is February 1. So they have a long time to get 200,000 signatures.
February 1 as we record.
Yes, as we record. So, I mean, I think it has to weigh large, especially because, past recalls have not been nearly as substantive. We haven't been in a pandemic.
Right.
We haven't had, vote by mail being the law of the land, essentially, right? So we're getting greater voter turnouts. So on one hand, that could certainly benefit Gavin if this actually does end up on a ballot later in the year. But on the other hand, if a lot of people are upset with him and just kind of go that way, do they have good options otherwise? I mean, I think that all of those are things that have to weigh in Gavin's head, and it then puts him in the defensive. He doesn't get to set the agenda. If this actually ends up on a ballot, he has to spend the next several months explaining why he shouldn't lose his job.
Right. This is now, they're saying it's possible for them to reach these numbers, but it sounds like they need money right now, that the campaign to recall him needs money. Yeah. It originally got something like a $50,000 boost from a guy named John Cox, who lost to Gavin Newsom by a whopping like 24 points in 2018, Republican. He will be, if this is successful, he will be running again. Cox running against Newsom. Also, a man who's going to be running is former mayor of San Diego, Kevin Faulconer, friend of the show, master of Falcons. And he considers himself like a Republican up the middle who's gonna, he can reach out to both sides and blah, blah, blah. But he's also a guy who voted for Trump in 2020. And that's going to be an albatross on him.
He also, in this Bee article, one of the things that he touts as like a reason that you should vote for him, he also pointed to his record of increasing police funding in San Diego, which honestly, like, I wish I could say confidently that would work against him, but given what we know about Republicans and Democrats in this city.
Yeah. It's interesting what Republicans are trying to do, because they know that they can never, in at least, oh my God, in best case scenario, a decade, win statewide office. They need to create a scenario where there are too many factors involved, that it's too chaotic, and some Republican in a recall vote squeaks through. The way to win a recall, all you need is a plurality. So if you get 30% and everybody gets fewer percentages than you win. So basically, it changes our voting system back to the backwards way that the US does its voting system, whereas California had been doing the top two primary. So what I would like to see is the top two primary be put into play for a recall election. That's just how it needs to go down. But I don't know. I don't know what happens. I really don't think it's extremely different today if Gavin were to be recalled. He's got pretty good numbers on people approving him.
Yeah.
B,
he's in like the high 50s, right? Which is like better than it sounds.
And then you've got just the sheer numbers of Dems versus Republicans. This is not Arnold Schwarzenegger recalling Gray Davis. We live in a different California now. And
it's
not only that,
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Exactly.
Right.
He was the Terminator.
John Cox is not Arnold.
Right. Like, people just voted for him because they thought it would be cool, right?
Yes.
Like,
so I really don't think they have a chance. I think it would be sort of madness. But I think if Gavin keeps doing, as you were saying, Skylar, gunning down the middle, pissing off these Q people and saying, well, if I piss off the Q people and I piss off labor, I must be doing something right, because now everyone's mad at me. That's not the way to do this.
No, it's not. It's really not.
You know who understands that? Every Republican politician.
Yep.
They are, if there's one thing that, and there aren't many things that I admire about them, but it's their commitment to their base, and like, they will not waver. And I'm just like, wow, I wish somebody could come out and be that, like, undaunted by whatever else is happening for us.
Right. Unless you're like a Mitt Romney or, the Jeff Flake Republican, which are basically at this point mod Dems.
Yeah.
Right. Sure.
I was going to say, I mean, they were always
Yep.
That's how the Democratic Party felt about them. Like, oh, shucks, you grew up in the wrong house, right? Like, because they're not that different from the mainstream Democrats.
Right. Mm-hmm. Well, speaking of useless moderate Democrats and people,
let's bring it local.
People trying to get them out of office. We have a couple of things going on here locally. Obviously, last week, Tuesday, there was that terrible storm, winds over 60 miles an hour. In Teresa Cliff's most recent piece in the Bee, she wrote that at least 4 people lost their lives that night in our region. I had only known about 3 before that. People are mad with reason. This was entirely preventable.
Mm-hmm.
As we said in the last episode, there are many directions where we can lay culpability, but the more that we learn, the clearer it seems to become that city manager of Sacramento, Howard Chan, could have done so much and was asked by multiple people on city council to do these things and did not act.
I think the aggravating part is that he actually didn't have to do that much. He could have very easily done very little and it would have had a huge impact, and he didn't do it.
Yeah. He could have simply kept open the warming center they had. He could have opened up one or two more places, and it could have saved lives.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I
now we
mean,
have.
And especially when his comments are always around, like, oh, I need 5 votes to be able to do anything. Well, when 5 council members reach out to you and ask you for the same thing, I think you have cover.
Right.
Especially when they're reaching out to you via text messages. Like, I think you can.
Right.
I mean, this could have been your story in the Bee, which is that 5 people told me, so don't get upset with me on the record later that I opened this up and spent the money because you all asked for it.
Right.
So the 5 people who asked him: Councilmember Katie Valenzuela, Councilmember Mai Vang, Mayor Darrell Steinberg, Councilmember Eric Guerra, and I believe
Ashby.
Member Angelique Ashby.
Yeah, I think Ashby asked
if something could be open.
Yes. Yeah.
And so that's 5 people right there.
Yep.
So the head of the SAC Region Coalition to End Homelessness, Bob Erlenbush, he does an annual report on the number of people who die in the streets every year. He is no stranger to this issue. And I think this is something that he feels strongly about. He came out, I believe it was today being Monday, February 1st, saying that Howard Chan needs to be fired.
I think this to me is just the cherry on top, right? I mean, just like 2 weeks ago, we were watching, we saw that extremely whack council meeting around policing, in which Chan was like, wanted to throw more money at the cops, right?
It was a year ago, but it was actually just 1 week, I think.
Yeah,
Right.
always. Like, I mean,
Right.
so 1 week ago from the time this will be published on Tuesday, the city's Budget and Audit Committee met. And on Budget and Audit Committee this year is the mayor, as well as council members Guerra, Vang, and Jennings. And they were presented with the mid-year revision for our budget. And mid-year, for those of you who aren't familiar, is when the council looks at the budget they passed last summer for 2020 and 2021 and says, how are we doing on revenue? How are we doing on spending? Are there any adjustments we need to make? And at that time, realized that we have something like $60 million more than we had projected at the time. And we can go into many reasons for that, including that some of the in-person sales that we were getting from businesses have been shifted to online. And because Measure U exists, Measure U is a transaction and use tax, it means that we still get tax on revenue on those. And a number of other things that are happening, right? Just even some of the things switching to online for our brick and mortar businesses. And so here they are, they have, this excess. And so they have, they have some of these council projects that they'd already talked about. And so there's this additional 40 million left over once they've handled all of that. And his proposal from his office is that we hire 10 new police officers with those dollars. Like, you can't be more tone deaf.
How tone deaf can you be?
Like, what really annoys me about that is that we have looming pension obligations already that are going to increase to an additional $30 million per year in the next couple of years. So we already have that, paying the pensions for people, not just police officers, obviously, like anybody who is a public employee of the city of Sacramento. That is our duty, to pay those pensions. So if we know we have that coming, why on earth would we increase our multi-year obligation by hiring staff and the worst kind of staff, because our police officers often have the highest salaries, and in terms of the things that this city needs right now, if we're going to be adding new staff, we need to be adding into our youth parks and community enrichment offices. We need to be adding them in economic development. Like, we need to be adding them to our housing and homelessness services. We should add some staff to that new Office of Community Response if we're actually going to be able to do some
any other
work.
area. Any other area would be a better use of that money.
Anybody but here, right? And so I'm just like,
now you're not only the chair of the Measure U committee, you are pretty regularly in contact with the people's budget, right, Flo?
yes. I am a part of the People's Budget Sacramento.
What is the People's Budget recommendation in relation to Howard Chan's, and has Howard Chan responded or listened to the People's Budget at all? The People's Budget being literally people in our city saying, hey, this is where our money should be going because this is where our morals and our ethics lie.
Yeah. So to date, the People's Budget has not been formally invited to present to the mayor and council or even to the city manager. The People's Budget has, however, presented to the Measure U committee. And so we have recommendations that are in close alignment in terms of what we're asking for. The People's Budget is interested in participatory budgeting. So is the Measure U committee. The People's Budget is interested in, alternatives to, the current 911 response, investing money in human assistance, because that's what the results of the survey are already showing us. And the People's Budget is interested in more robust polling because we've done all of this for free with no resources, just based on a convenient sample. And so we want to have a representative sample of Sacramentans and be able to ask these questions. And so all of those things are included. There have been requests made, but no one has taken the request up to be able to actually have an opportunity to present officially on the record. But there are requests that are into them around the things that the People's Budget has been advocating for. And I think that's an important next step, is for them to actually think about what their process looks like to get input on their budget, because they have dates. These dates are coming up really soon for when they're going to be making decisions. Mid-year is going to be voted on tomorrow. And so that will be the end of the 2020-2021 budget. And now we move into
tomorrow being today, February 2nd.
That's right.
Tuesday.
Sorry, I keep doing that. Yes, February 2nd, today, Tuesday, that will be voted. And then, in a few short weeks, we start the process for the new budget that will be passed. I believe the date is going to be June 15th for that. And so there are a series of upcoming dates that are really important to keep in mind. And I'll mention those now just because I think they're important for people to know. So the draft of the new budget is going to be released on April 19th. And that will be for the 2021-2022 budget. And then the budget and audit discussion is going to happen on May 4th. And then there will be budget workshops. And this is really where the People's Budget is really interested in. How are you going to host these workshops, and how are people's feedback going to be incorporated? But those will happen for the remainder of May and June. And then the final budget approval is scheduled to be on June 15th.
And to drive this home, the city, neither the city manager nor city council have been very receptive at all to hearing what the People's Budget has to say?
To date, the People's Budget has not received an audience officially with either body, either the administrative side or the elected side. So
I want to drive home just how galling that is, how much a mayor who claims he's progressive and is gobsmacked when progressives do not agree with his decisions becomes. This is why. Why are you not listening to people? Why are you not listening to the people that want to be a part of this political process? It's galling.
You know what's worse?
What?
You know where we have presented the People's Budget?
Measure U.
To the county.
Oh my God, really?
Yes. So the county has allowed a presentation on the People's Budget, but the city has not. And the county
has that on the city.
Yes. And the county is actually having a 5-hour workshop this Thursday, February 4th, from 3 p.m. to 8 p.m. The county is having its first budget workshop that's taking place. No word on when the city's budget workshops are going to take place or how that's going to happen. So right now, in terms of engagement with the official body and in terms of workshops scheduled, it is the county 2, the city 0.
Incredible.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, we don't have much time left, but I think we'd be remiss if we didn't also mention that the Sacramento Homelessness, what is it, Union?
It's the Homeless Union.
Has put a call out for Mayor Darrell Steinberg to resign due to, I believe, the events of last week, Tuesday,
Correct.
and the deaths that took place in the streets. These are folks, it's really a collection of a lot of people that go out and provide mutual aid to people experiencing homelessness. They see how much is not being done on the part of our city and our county. They've been frustrated day in and day out. And then it culminates in Tuesday night, where people that they know and have served have died, and neither the city or county did anything to do that. So when the Homeless Union comes out and demands that Darrell Steinberg resigns, and when they say, if you don't do it by Wednesday, we are going to launch a recall campaign, it's hard for me to think anything but, or it's hard for me to feel anything but empathy for just the frustration of all that that they've dealt with, and of course the pain, the suffering that has gone on in our streets for so long that, it feels like last week Wednesday, they had an emergency meeting, it feels like they're moving on things. But for a lot of these council members who've been there for a long time, and for this mayor who's been there for 4 years, doesn't it feel in some ways too little too late?
Yeah.
I mean, I think there's a lot of that sentiment going around for sure.
Absolutely. And I think what added insult to injury was, it feels like a little too late. And then to watch Howard say, if I had it to do all again, I might make the same decision. Like, I just want to translate that into because we use these euphemisms sometimes, right? When people, when things happen that obscure the actual meaning of the words you're saying. When Howard Chan says, I very well may make the same decision again if given the same set of circumstances, what he's saying is that all of the people who lost all of their belongings, who were harmed, because the 4 people who died don't begin to touch the tip of the iceberg of the people who were harmed by the weather, whose very livelihood was further eroded and may very well be more vulnerable to the next time something like this happens. And of course, the 4 individuals who lost their lives and died as a result of the storm, that he would kill them again. He would harm them again. He would put you in the path of a storm and allow you to spend the night being treated worse than most people treat their pets. Okay? And would have very little in the way of remorse about doing so. That's what he's saying. Like, and he's not, that sentence doesn't get extended out because we say things in these nice ways, but that's the communication there is not, no, I wouldn't do that again. It was a regrettable decision and I wish I had made a different one, but maybe.
Yeah, I might do that again.
Maybe.
Yeah.
That's violence. That is violence on his part. And there's no other way to view it. And so how do we respond as people, right? When we have city officials who are supposed to be protecting
so callous
people
about the lives of the people that they're supposed to be managing.
Yeah. And it's violence and it's in his hands. Like, there's no other way to say this.
Yeah.
It's unconscionable. I mean, I just can't imagine this being a person who deploys the police, having no clue how they're going to respond to people, whether or not they're going to harm people, what the liability costs are going to be, and then turning around and being the same person who hesitates to bring people indoors when there are 60 to 70 mile per hour winds that are predicted for the night. Like, I can't imagine being that person.
Well, I mean, the best case scenario for this guy is that he doesn't care about unhoused people. From his actions and the things that he says, it appears that he actually just actively dislikes the unhoused population of this city. Like, and through his actions and his words, I don't know, like that seems to be the message that is coming through from the office of the city manager right now.
There's no reason to disagree with you there. I don't think I could.
Nope.
At the very best, he doesn't care about them.
Right.
You know, we do calls to action on the show a lot. This seems like a no-brainer. It's time for Howard Chan to go.
Yep. 100%. So keep
Yep.
your ears. There are a number of efforts being organized right now in order to put that in motion. So I would say kind of keep your ears open for that and look for that Fire Howard Chan hashtag that's going around right now.
I saw a doctor put that on Twitter a day or two ago in response to a very dumb tweet by the head of the editorial board at the Bee.
No.
Don't lie on Measure U. That's all I have to say. Like,
I can't believe Gil had
fiction.
can't believe Gil had the audacity to lie about Measure U there. That was chef's kiss, Gil.
He rules.
You know, and so if you want to go above and beyond, reach out to your council member's office. Tell them you support Howard Chan getting the boot. It's time. It's time. Somebody in a position like that, just letting people die. He's anachronistic. He is not responsive to what the people want. We are moving into a place in this city where we want to take care of each other. Howard doesn't want to take care of our unhoused population. Get him out.
Yeah, let's be done with him. Another call to action, Shannon, who is not on the show, but has reached out from the hot tub and asked us to mention there will be a vigil and memorial for the folks we lost in the storm this Friday at 5 p.m. It's going to start at City Hall and it will end at the Board of Soup's office downtown. So if you are around and can make it, it will be socially distant. Please bring a mask and come out and support. Yeah, I don't know. It's a time, I think, like, community is important at a time like this.
It is. And you might be a listener who's like, this sounds like a sad thing, or maybe I don't feel comfortable. Like, you know, who am I to go to something like this? I didn't know these folks. You would be surprised at the feeling of community you have going to something like this and seeing how many people care, and the feeling that there are this many people who really want to state that these folks' lives mattered.
Yeah.
I think it's really important and it's really good.
Yeah, things like this are not fun to go to, but I think you always kind of come away being glad that you went.
Yeah.
And if you need a place to be able to put your, you know, your energy after that, in terms of, you know, sometimes I feel like I get down when I have these experiences that connect to my humanity, and I'm faced with like, what can I do about it? I want to make sure this fate does not befall someone else in the future. And so I do just want to call out a couple of opportunities that are coming up. We mentioned already the workshop for the county that's happening on Thursday to talk about the budget. The county bears some responsibility in this as well, in terms of being able to mobilize resources to be able to care for our unhoused populations as well. And we rightly place a lot of blame on the city, but the county also owes not only the people in the unincorporated areas, but also the people in the cities to be good partners and to be able to mobilize resources as well. And they did not do that. The second, I would say, is that next Tuesday on February 9th, the Board of Supervisors is going to entertain a proposal from the ACLU to put some more oversight over the sheriff. And so that is another one to tune into and consider about, consider whether or not you want to support and how. And then on February 23rd, the county is going to be hearing more about alternatives to 911 and how they can potentially better serve our communities overall. So those are 3 opportunities coming up at the county level where you can share your voice, share your outrage, share your pain, not to put it on display, but to be able to really let people know you care about this issue and that you are not going to go silently, and that there needs to be some substantive change that follows from, the people who unfortunately lost their lives because of our blatant disregard collectively.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to do it a little different this time because we're kind of out of time here. So I'm going to bulldoze right through it here. Thank you for listening to the show. You can find a whole plethora of wonderful stuff if you go to voicesrivercity.com. That's not only all of these podcast episodes, but a ton, like years of work that Dave has done and others have,
and many
have put
others,
into it. Yeah, have put into it. Worth checking out. You can find us on all the social media platforms. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're on Twitter. You can go to YouTube and watch us if that is your preference.
Oh yeah. We're on the radio.
We're on 103.1 The Cuts. We air there
Tuesday nights at 6 p.m. And if you miss us then on your way home from work, Wednesday mornings at 8 a.m. on your way into work.
There you go. Perfect. We do 2 shows a week. We do this one that comes out on Tuesdays that you're listening to right now. We also do one every Friday, but that one is only for our Patreon subscribers, one of which you can become easily by going to patreon.com/voicesrivercity and putting down as little as $5 a month. You get twice the content. It's a no-brainer.
Sean Laloy, baby, get that $5 a month.
Oh, he's into it. He's listening.
D2, come on.
You can find me personally at Twitter at Guillotine for You. That's Guillotine, the number 4, YOU.
I am Yuno Kempa at YOUKNOWKEMPA.
I am at Flojaune, FLOJAUNE. And Shannon, who is not with us tonight, is Shan ND Stevens.
All right. Well, that is going to wrap us for today. Thank you all for listening. Have a great couple of days. Until then, we want you to know that we appreciate you listening and we love you. And we want you to stay safe.
Stay sane.
Stay healthy.
And stay the fuck away from me.
All right. All right, we did it.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Or good morrow.
Good morrow.